There's a lot of people walking around who are really scared because they don't know what's going to happen next in their life.
I kind of always say I don't want kids to be crying in a class, and I'm not even joking with that because kids come down so stressed so much.
And we know it's an uphill battle because we're kind of fighting against tradition, we're fighting against an already established culture that's pretty ingrained.
A successful high school student, I would say, is somebody that's well prepared for college.
I'd probably say getting into good college, because high school is pretty much all about getting into a good college and then having a good future life.
The grades you get in school, the awards you win, they do like college applications, that they go on there, colleges see that.
Like, I don't like getting bad grades.
The whole goal is that if you get into a good college, then you can, have a good job when you're older.
You're not necessarily a bad student if you don't get into the college you want to get into, but it is kind of a validation.
And you look at trends over time and you say, these things are getting worse.
Hi, I'm Will, a Northern Highlands class of 2016 graduate. Northern Highlands opened in 1965. Initially, the school served just Allendale and Upper Saddle River. The first superintendent was Gerald Hopkins, for which the auditorium is now named. I'm proud to have graduated from such an outstanding high school. We have students who are winning academic and sports awards, including state championships. We have students going on to elite colleges every year. Now, all the success, naturally, comes with student competition.
I do think we are a competitive high school. Students know that we're competitive. We're one of the top schools in the state of New Jersey.
Northern Highlands students come from some of the richest towns in New Jersey: Allendale, Hohokus, Upper Saddle River, and Saddle River. While there are plenty of positives to living in upper middle class communities like these, teenagers seem to have a harder time in affluent culture than you might think. In her research on teens of affluence, Dr. Sonia Luthar from Arizona State University found that teens, specifically from upper middle class families, feel relentless pressure to succeed in school, extracurriculars, and even social life. She says that affluent teenagers are motivated to work so hard because they want to meet the quality of living that they are used to. In addition, well-off teens seem to have all of the resources necessary to succeed, so they feel like if they don't succeed, they'll disappoint their parents, making them afraid to fail. By middle school, they start to wonder, who am I? And for teens in competitive upper middle class communities, this becomes, what will I amount to? And will I get into a top-ranked college? They see that their parents have money, so the underlying message they get is essentially, having money is the only path to happiness. Affluent teens believe that in order to get money, they will have to attend a prestigious college, which means they have to pack their schedule with activities and difficult classes to build a good resume. There becomes very little time for self-reflection and for developing unique interests. Many students become perfectionists. They rely on that one more GPA point that they believe will get them accepted to a high-level university. But if they don't get the extra point, they feel like they've failed and blame themselves. Many affluent parents also see a top-ranked college as necessary for making money and therefore being happy. So they hire coaches and tutors for their children to achieve the very best. They praise their children's accomplishments but become disappointed in their failures, which teaches them to work hard so they can avoid parental criticism. Dr. Luthar found that when parents of wealth valued their children's successes far more than their decency and kindness, the children were more likely to show symptoms of depression and anxiety. High expectations not only come from parents, but from teachers, coaches, and peers. Pressure to succeed is ingrained in the upper middle class culture, and because of it, most students are too stressed. Many become anxious from too much stress, and others become depressed when expectations are too high. When we look at a student walking down the hallway, we assume that they're doing fine. We think they look happy, so they must be happy. But teens will always put on masks to hide their true feelings, which means our perception of the problem is distorted. 20% of teens in America have depression, and 25% have anxiety. These numbers are often even higher for students in affluent communities. Many students are able to hide their depression from others because they are high functioning. They maintain high performance in school and athletics, but decline emotionally at home. They don't display the typical symptoms of depression, so the illness is often overlooked. Tragically, in 2014, 2 former Highland students died by suicide while in the first year of college, and neither of them showed the typical signs of depression.
I think we had a culture for a long time at Highlands that everything was just fine, was working. not that teachers didn't continue to innovate, but there was this idea that this was a traditional place and it was working just fine. And then we had some things happen. We had former student suicides. We had a higher incidence in the rate of school phobia and school refusal. We had a number of pretty high-profile situations with drugs, some of which led to death, and it made us kind of examine whether we weren't missing some things with regard to the mental health and wellness of our students.
The ultimate goal is to change our high-pressure culture so students can feel like they're allowed to take a step back and restore a balance in their life. But how do we even go about changing a culture that is so established? It starts with small changes, and many of those changes need to happen in Northern Highlands. All of the stakeholders in the Northern Highlands community, students, parents, teachers, coaches, and administrators have a responsibility to make student wellness a priority. The good thing is that the movement has already started. The Wellness Initiative was started by teachers of the Highlands Professional Learning Community, or PLC, to promote awareness of the mental health problem.
Over the last couple of years, mental health and wellness has been more in the consciousness of people. I think I've heard a lot more people talking about those kinds of issues over the last 2 years. Last year we screened Race to Nowhere. We had two night outings where we had large and small group conversations.
In addition, small changes have already been made by the administration.
You've experienced a couple of breaks that have been homework free. You have maybe seen a reduction in summer assignments and things like that.
I think bringing dogs, we have the therapy dogs here during final exams. That certainly, from what we hear, reduces stress.
Well, I mean, you all did experience the Wellness Day, right? So that came out of all this conversation.
Reach out as far as you can, and now bring that energy into your belly.
So we're trying to put certain things in place without having a major shift or change. But I think the things that we're doing right now, at least leading in the right direction.
In this film, we'll show you how Highlands doesn't have to wait for a complete overhaul of the education system to see happier students. The community can make changes now that can raise our students' happiness and lower their stress, without sacrificing their motivation and success. In June 2016, the filmmakers conducted an anonymous survey on student stress. The survey was emailed to all students attending the 2015-2016 school year. Students were not randomly selected to take this survey, but instead they volunteered to take it, so it should be noted that voluntary response bias was present. We received 379 responses from Northern Highlands students, with representation from each grade and gender. Full results are available on the film's website. One of the most important findings from the survey was student stress levels. 34% of respondents said they had a moderate stress level throughout the school year, 37% said they had a high stress level, and 11% said they had an extreme level of stress. To understand why students at Highlands will go to extreme levels of stress in order to succeed, we have to look at their motivation. There are two types of motivation, intrinsic and extrinsic.
Intrinsic is just that you want to do well for you, for your goals and things like that. I'm afraid that more motivation at Highlands is due to things outside of students, whether it's their home life or their peers, or it's a general pressure from, I think, the outside that pushes in on a student that says that unless you do these things in this way, you won't be successful.
I see a cover for section 2, and then I turn the page and start section 2.
I think there's a lot of motivators, especially for the kids at Northern Highlands. I think their biggest motivation is their peers. I see a lot of students compare themselves to one another. When I hand a test back, the first question that I hear out of a kid's mouth is, "What'd you get?" to another student. And I don't necessarily think that they ever sit back and think, what did I learn?
I think our students here probably are motivated because they want to get into a good school.
Most students seem to agree. 65% of survey respondents said that grades in college motivates them the most to work hard in school.
College, I would say, I hate to say it, but it's only 2 years away from me, a year and a half. This fall I'm applying, and I definitely would say that's mainly on my mind.
I think a lot of them are motivated by grades and college acceptance, but I don't think they're necessarily happy about it. I think they just feel like they have to accept it. I think they've kind of given up on any noble hopes, and they're like, look, that's all fine and well, but I have to get into college, so I'll make time for learning later.
It's almost all about the grade. I mean, I think if my students, most of them in the end, were told that, you know, if they, you know, they could renounce that I ever existed or somehow make me disappear if it was going to make their grade go up, they'd probably do it.
As implied by Mr. Belluzzi, students at Highlands will go to great lengths to get the best possible grades and the best possible college acceptances. Oftentimes, these great lengths come with a great amount of stress, and for a lot of students, too much stress. But where does this stress come from? Not surprisingly, Highlands survey respondents put schoolwork as their biggest source of stress as a student, followed by getting into a good college.
I think my daughter's stress is mostly because she tries to do too much outside of school, and then she doesn't have enough time for her academics.
I mean, the main thing that I see all the time on a daily basis is, you know, there's too many tests or quizzes or things that are due at the same time, and kids would be fine handling that if they didn't also have so many things to do after school. So they have their teams or their dance or swim competitions, whatever it is. There's only so many hours in a day, so they just can't get it all done, and then they'll end up going to bed super late, they don't get enough sleep, and they're exhausted, and then the cycle continues.
Students feel as though they have to take on too many things. They have to take a certain amount of these classes, they have to be in a certain amount of clubs, they have to be in an athletic activity, they have to do out-of-school activities or volunteer work or something, you know, like they feel as though without those things, their resume is not sufficient for them to be able to achieve their goals. So I think it's a false sense of necessity that students feel.
We feel like we have to be the best.
It's really, really competitive.
We have a very rigorous curriculum.
I think there's an expectation here that they succeed.
To me, it's like this balancing act of a highly academic demanding environment and a nurturing, healthy environment. They're not necessarily exclusive, but if it becomes out of balance to where I think Highlands might be at this point, is too competitive and too concentrated on these unrealistic goals for many students.
I think there's a huge social pressure, and intertwined with that social pressure is the pressure of fitting in a really successful environment. And academics come into play because part of fitting in socially is fitting in academically around here.
There are a lot of kids in this school that are not only good at stuff, but like that excel at a lot of things. Last fall we had the Bergen Record Awards Athlete of the Season to 6 people, right? 1 for each sport. 4 of those people were from Northern Highlands. Our DECA program, right, is like nationally ranked or whatever. Kids go to nationals and win awards. The a cappella group is like on, you know, has their own reality show and they're like this national champion.
Our winner, Highlands Voices.
The band is a national, everybody's winning state championships left and right. And there's a lot of that here. And I wish that kids that are in this building that weren't like that realized that that is not normal. Like, it's great. Like all of the success that people have around here is great, but the volume of success is just not normal. Like, it's not typical in any other high school. I think people's idea of success in this building gets distorted because there are just so many people in this building that are exceptional, that if you're not completely exceptional at something, you kind of feel like I'm not really keeping up. But if you went anywhere else, you'd be keeping up. And not enough credit is given to the people that don't get the shine.
For most students, schoolwork is the biggest source of their stress, and a lot of that work comes in the form of homework. But just how much homework are students getting on an average school night?
30 minutes to an hour.
About an hour or 2.
2 hours.
I would say an average like 2.5 hours.
2 to 3 hours.
2 to 3 hours?
No more than like 3 hours.
Up to 3-4 hours.
Anywhere from about 3 hours to like 4 hours.
3 to 4 hours. I would say like 4 hours.
Homework can be a great tool for students to practice what they learned in class, but does more of it really lead to greater success in school? Using our survey data, we found a positive but very weak correlation between amount of homework and GPA for Northern Highlands students. This means that there is almost no relationship between the amount of homework a student does and their grades.
So you don't need to do 30 problems. You could do 10 problems and get the same from it.
In a 2006 meta-analysis, Professor of Psychology Harris Cooper also found a positive but weak correlation between hours of homework and academic achievement for high school students, but only up to a certain point. Homework reaches the point of diminishing returns after about 2 hours. He says that in most cases, going beyond 2 hours a night won't improve academic achievement and can be counterproductive.
I think that having too much homework causes too much stress on a student, and especially in high school. If you get that stress in high school, when you get to college, it's only kind of getting worse with the work, so that's why it kind of burns you out. So you feel like it's kind of tough finding the right amount of homework.
A 2007 MetLife homework survey found that 21% of American students reported getting more than that recommended maximum of 2 hours a night. The percentage of Highland students who said they had more than 2 hours of homework a night? Not 21, but 60%. Even more surprising, the average amount of homework was about 2.5 hours a night. While this is definitely a problem that we need to address, the solution is not to put a hard limit on the amount of homework a student gets. Instead, math teacher Mr. DiLorenzo believes that we need to get at the root of the problem.
We as a school and everybody needs to re-examine like the purpose of homework and things. So I've taken a good look at that myself. Like, what is it you expect a student to gain by doing homework?
Mr. Rayside believes students can gain a lot from homework, even if it's not graded.
I've spent the last few years not grading homework, and the reason for that is because certain students don't need to do homework in my class in order to be successful. Being a student, in my opinion, is about learning, and many students are capable of learning just as well in my class by just being in class. If I were to force students to complete homework assignments that they already know how to do, what point does that really serve? All it does is create busy work, and I don't think that students in high school should be forced to do busy work. Students are pressed for time the way that it is, so I'd rather see them spending their time in maybe other classes that they struggle with, maybe that they need to get some extra help in or something like that, or just other things that take them more time to do. I just really believe that there's no sense in creating busy work for students in a high school. Some kids will decide to not do the homework in my class, and that's okay because ultimately they're all held accountable on tests or quizzes. If they decide to not do the work at all, and they come to a test or a quiz and they don't do as well as they thought that they would like to have done, maybe they think to themselves, well, maybe I should have done that work. And to me, for them to come to that realization on their own is a lot more powerful than us forcing that on them with some sort of an artificial grade. So, I think if they had more of a choice in what work that they really needed to do and what work they wanted to do, then you would see more kids enjoy the work that they're doing, and I think you'd see more learning come from it.
According to our survey, 61% of Highland students agreed with a non-graded homework policy.
I feel like it's your responsibility to be on top of things. Like if you can't stay on top of things inside the classroom and you need the extra work, yeah, maybe it should be optional, but that should be a personal choice. And if you're motivated enough, it should be a personal choice.
You give kids who did care the ability to just pursue homework because they want to learn more about the subject that they're doing or because they need the help.
Mr. Rayside's theory seems to be favored by a lot of people, but in order to make sure it didn't have a negative effect on student performance, he ran an experiment in 2014 to test it.
I took half of my class and I said, I'm not going to hold you accountable for homework. And the other half of the class, I held them accountable for homework. Every single day I gave a homework assignment and I graded it. Okay, so there was accountability on one end, no accountability on the other end. The kids who weren't accountable for the homework, very few of them actually did the assignments that were assigned. The results then, I basically said, okay, so then I'm gonna give everybody a test, like a unit test, and compare how the two groups did. The group that wasn't held accountable for homework, on average, did better than the group that was held accountable for homework. And now, not by a lot, but the average test grade for the group that had no homework was slightly higher than the group that had homework. So in that one small experiment, we were able to show that there was really no difference between whether you did or didn't do homework.
We need to take a close look at what we expect us to get out of homework.
So many people are stressed out with taking 4 APs, 5 APs, just so colleges can really look at them and they can stand out to colleges.
We see a lot of kids take AP classes in subjects that they're not remotely interested in, but just because it's an AP.
I guess it looks good for college.
To challenge myself and for college credit, and because I'm interested in them.
Out of those who took at least one AP class in the 2015-2016 school year, 47% said they took it because they were interested in the subject, and 43% said they took it because it would help them get into a better college. We know that many students feel pressure to take APs, But where does that pressure come from?
I felt pressure when I was scheduling, especially for this year, to take at least 3 because I took 2 last year, so I constantly wanted to increase, and I guess that pressure comes from college admissions.
If a high-level university sees a transcript with no APs, that's a red flag, I think. It's unfortunate, but it's definitely true.
I think it comes from other students and older, upperclassmen saying, if you want to go to this school, you need to take, 3 APs your sophomore year, or whatever it is, 2 APs, 3 APs, 4 APs. I keep hearing that from other parents of other kids that have gotten into good schools.
Students have another reason for loading up on AP classes.
It's a good GPA booster.
It's a weighted GPA, so it is worth more. It does help you out with that.
With Northern Highlands' weighting system, students receive 1 additional GPA point for AP courses.
There are many times when I have conversation with students and they actually tell me the only reason they're taking the AP class is because of the boost in their GPA, the only reason. Parents may force them in that direction, students may not even want to.
One of the things I really, truly think we should begin to explore is the concept of taking away weighting of courses.
I'm taking 4 next year, and I feel like if there wasn't a GPA factor, me and students as a whole would be more reluctant to take them.
Many students agreed. 46% of AP student respondents said they would have decided not to take some of their AP classes if they didn't get an additional GPA point.
Oh, I think it would be delightful. I think what would happen if they didn't have that extra boost would be, I would see extreme drops in the number of students in the AP classes, which would be terrible for the AP program. But I would see students who actually wanted to be there, and students who maybe were challenged by AP but really loved the subject. And I think that would be fantastic.
You take away the weighting, then you get students who are only taking the class because they love the class, they love what they're going to learn in that class, because there's nothing attached to it as far as GPA. If you rank or you weight everything the same, then it doesn't matter what class you take. Okay, so that's, and we know perfectly well students are taking AP classes because it boosts their GPA.
With so much pressure to succeed, students feel the need to check their grades constantly on a website called Genesis. A few years ago, Highlands opened 24/7 access to Genesis.
It is the one decision that I could point to, if I could point to one single decision that had a damaging effect on the notion of what education is in the high school, it's 24/7 access to Genesis.
So how often do students really check their grades?
I check it like once a week, maybe not even.
Once or twice a week.
3 times a week?
Probably like once a day.
I usually check it once a day.
Too many. Probably like 8. I'd say I probably check 2 or 3 times a day, so that's like 14 to 21 times a week.
I would say twice a day.
Probably like 3 times a day, to be honest.
About a third of all students surveyed said they check Genesis more than 10 times each week, and 6% check it more than 40 times a week.
Students look at Genesis way too much. Not everybody. Yeah. It's an obsession. They look at it too much.
It is an obsession, and the dangers of the obsession are hard to detect. Genesis, like social media, can be an addiction. An experiment from UCLA on social media shows that the reward center of teenagers' brains are especially active when they see a large number of likes in their own photo. The brain begins to rewire itself and makes the teen desire these rewards even more. Could the same process happen when students see a good test grade on Genesis? It's possible. A like on social media and a good test grade are both instant self-esteem boosters, so it may be hard for teenagers to see checking grades too much as an unhealthy behavior. This might explain why more than half of survey respondents believe that 24/7 access to grades is actually healthy for students.
When it gets to that point, when you're obsessing over looking at it multiple times a day, I think that's kind of an unhealthy behavior.
I think that checking Genesis all the time can be detrimental because then you do start to constantly worry.
I think it does impact how much stress I have because I'm so preoccupied with numbers that I sometimes lose focus of learning and stuff like that.
You have those kids who they have an A, they have a 94, 95, but if I get the 96.45, I can get the 97 and the A+. So maybe that aspect, seeing the 2 decimal points, that can cause stress.
I've had kids say, Genesis is my mom's favorite website, and that's a problem.
We surveyed parents and asked them, how often do you think it is healthy for a student to check Genesis, and how often do you think it is healthy for a parent to check Genesis? And the vast majority of the people said once a week for students is a healthy amount of time, and maybe like once every 2 weeks or once a month for parents.
I don't think we can just get rid of it now. I think it's like you can't take away the drug.
I would have it open much less often than it is now.
I think access to Genesis should be open once a week, maybe like one day or like on the weekends.
I wouldn't mind if it was open maybe just on weekends, right? You work for a week in class and then it's open Friday afternoon to Monday morning.
Students certainly need stress to push them to succeed, but for many of them, the stress from schoolwork is just too much. Over 60% of students said their stress level is harmful. So what are the effects of harmful stress that we should look out for? Too much stress for teenagers can cause anxiety in the short term, and in the long term, high stress levels are linked with heart problems, obesity, as well as chronic anxiety and depression. In another survey taken by students during a screening of Race to Nowhere in October 2014, 60% reported feeling physically ill over stress from school. Headaches, colds, and stomach problems are common stress-induced illnesses to look out for.
Do you think you're sleep deprived?
I'd say so, yeah. But you get used to it.
Excessive stress can also cause too little sleep. Most Highland students who responded to our survey said they are sleep deprived during the school year.
Whenever I'm sleep deprived, it's studying. It's because I had too much going on that day, or it's because I couldn't fall asleep that night because I was thinking about this stuff that day.
Lack of sleep affects the student's ability to learn and process information.
It gets in the way of student concentration. It can cause emotional problems. It can lead to problems with weight management.
It affects the student's ability to drive safely. Students without enough sleep are at a higher risk for getting into car accidents and being late to homeroom. In addition, sleep-deprived students are more likely to use caffeine and make poor choices for substance use. In their 2006 Sleep in America poll, the National Sleep Foundation, or NSF, found that 62% of American high school students get less than 8 hours of sleep per school night. This is surprising considering the NSF recommends a minimum of 8 hours of sleep for teens to function best. But what you'll find even more surprising is the results from our school. 96% of Highland students from our survey said they get less than 8 hours of sleep on an average school night. 30% said they get 5 to 6 hours on a school night, and 14% said they get less than 5 hours.
Probably get like 6 hours, 7 hours a night if I'm lucky.
Around 6 to 7.
6.
6 would be good.
I get like 5, 6.
Like 5 hours?
5. I know no one who goes to bed consistently every night, 10 o'clock, wakes up on time and is not tired.
There were some nights where I know guys were staying up until 1 or 2 in the morning doing homework, so not nearly enough.
In addition, we found a negative correlation between student stress levels and their average hours of sleep. So the higher a student's stress, the less sleep they got.
When that alarm goes off at 6:30, that's hard. That's a hard time to get up in the morning.
So how can we help students get more sleep?
One of the changes that I think that we could take as a school would be to consider rethinking the start time of the school day. I mean, even the biological clock, the circadian rhythm of adolescence is not geared to be waking up at 6:30 or 7 o'clock in the morning and to be functioning at any kind of responsible cognitive level by 7:45, 8 o'clock.
Not only this, but during adolescence, biological sleep patterns shift towards later sleep times and later wake times. It's not natural for a teen to go to bed before 11 p.m.
Most research says that students are about ready to start learning around 10 o'clock. Now, 10 o'clock is a little bit late, but why couldn't we at least push it back to 8:20, 8:30?
In the late 90s, a high school in Edina, Minnesota changed the start time from 7:20 to 8:30 a.m. University of Minnesota researchers studied the impact of the shift and were surprised to find that students reported feeling less depressed and less sleepy during the day. Soon, the entire Minneapolis school district delayed start times as well, and found that students reported getting an average of an hour's more sleep each school night, contradicting skeptics who said that students would just go to bed later. More recently, a 2014 research study by the University of Minnesota revealed that high schools with a start time of 8:30 or later allow for more than 60% of students to get at least 8 hours of sleep per school night. Currently, just 4% of Highland students from our survey get that amount.
This is not a decision that can just be made by Northern Highlands because it affects a lot of different things. So if like the entire county or the entire state decided, hey, you know what, no high school is allowed to start until 8:30 or 8:45, then it's possible. But people just want to continue ignoring the research that says how much sleep you guys need and think, oh, whatever, like you get through it, you get by, but it's not good.
「」 . 」 . 」 . 」 . 」 . 」 . 」 . 」 . 」 . 」 . 」 . 」 . 」 . 」 . 」 . 」 . 」 . 」 . 」 . 」 . 」 . 」 . 」 . 」 . 」 . 」 . 「」 . 」 . 」 . 」 . 」 . 」 . 」 . 」 . 」 . 「 . 」 . 」 . 「 . 」 . 」 . 「 . 」 . 」 . 「 . 」 . 「 」 . 「 」 .
sometimes I do wish, like, oh, maybe, like, what if I didn't take any APs? What if I just took CP honors classes? What if I didn't do all these activities outside of school and, like, I just, like, took a step back? But, like, I wouldn't be happy with that. Like, I think I'm capable of doing a lot, and I'm capable of, like, succeeding and taking on a lot of activities.
With all these stressful things, it's easy to want to eliminate the stress from our lives. But while the effects of stress tend to be more negative than positive for Highland students, we have to understand that stress itself is not a bad thing.
I think that there's this mindset across the board and more at Highlands that stress is bad, stress is horrible, everybody's so stressed out, we need to get rid of stress, we need to de-stress. And the reality is that stress is a part of life, and we live in a world that constantly subjects us to various kinds of stressors. And it doesn't end when school ends and your time as a student ends. There's stress in adult life, there's stress in your job, there's stress in family life and personal life.
You can eliminate work, but that won't change the nature of, like, how we act, like our drive, like our motivations, like who we are, our values. Like, you can do those things, but in the end, we still are very competitive. We're still really stressed about college.
I think it's a better thing to focus on to make students better equipped to handle stress, which is a part of life.
Most students from our survey already have their own way of dealing with stress. Some students exercise, some listen to music, some talk to their peers, parents, or teachers, and some seek professional help. But almost 1/5 of respondents say they don't address their stress at all. We need to give students the tools to deal with their stress, not only for their time in high school, but also for their stressful lives after they graduate. One tool we can teach students to use is tapping. Tapping provides relief from many physical and mental diseases and is gaining popularity because it is free and more effective than talk therapy and pills. It can be used by high school students to deal with stress and anxiety. Michelle Vallone, a tapping coach for teens and adults, talks about how this method works for stress relief.
We tap on particular acupressure meridians in your body, and the tapping allows us to help diffuse the emotional charge that's contributing to the issue. And doing that, we take away the intensity of the experience, whatever it is that someone's frightened about, whatever's at the core or the root of what's creating their anxiety and panic. The tapping helps to distill and get to the it of the issue.
Tapping has received skepticism for being too good to be true, but recent research has proven its effectiveness. Cortisol is the hormone secreted by the body under stress. In a controlled experiment of 83 subjects by Dr. Dawson Church, an hour-long tapping session lowered cortisol levels by 24%. In an hour-long talk therapy session, there was no significant cortisol reduction. And students don't need a coach to benefit from tapping. They can tap by themselves whenever they're feeling stressed. The best way to learn more and get started is to visit thetapping-solution.com. Another tool that is more widely known is meditation, a form of mindfulness. When many people imagine meditation, they think of monks sitting cross-legged in a room filled with incense. But anyone can practice meditation in their home. In meditation, the mind is aware and focused, not distracted by racing thoughts. Students can use meditation to rest their mind and learn to control the stressful thoughts from a busy day. According to the science behind it, meditation for stress calms the nervous system, slows heart rate and breathing, and actually rewires the brain to reduce reactivity and increase emotional control. In fact, meditation is one of the most effective forms of stress reduction.
And the beauty of it is that even though it kind of need only take about 10 minutes a day, it impacts our entire life.
If you like, you can just gently start to count the breaths as they pass. So as you feel the rising sensation, you count 1, falling sensation 2.
All you need to do is to take 10 minutes out a day to step back, to familiarize yourself with the present moment so that you get to experience a greater sense of focus, calm, and clarity in your life.
The easiest way for students to get started with meditation is with the free iPhone app, Headspace, created by Andy Puddicombe. Andy guides you through 10, 15, or 20-minute meditation sessions, instructing you to be aware of your breath, body, and surroundings.
Hi, and welcome to day 1 of Take 10. Over the next 10 days, I'm going to be showing you how to get a little bit more headspace in your life.
The first 30 sessions are free and introduce you to the basics of meditation. After that, you can subscribe to Headspace to receive specific meditation packs dealing with issues related to health and relationships. One of the packs is specifically designed for dealing with stress. No matter how much students are able to manage their stress, they still have to work hard, and they're expected to work hard. Those expectations seem to come mostly from colleges.
I mean, grades pretty much like determine what college you get into, and your college kind of helps your success for the future.
Through this survey that we've done through our PLC, we asked this exact question. Do you think college is one of the most important factors in your child's future success? And 55% of people that responded said yes, that it was one of the most important things.
67% of students also believe this. But does the specific college a student attends really matter as much as people think?
The school, as long as it's a decent school, I don't think it really matters. But I don't think my kids think that.
I used to think it would a lot. I used to think, the common phrase of students now is Yale or jail.
This generation has this idea that it's either Yale or jail, right? And like that gap in between is so huge.
Can one school be better than another for you? Absolutely. Does that mean that if you don't get into that school and take your second choice, that you'll just be homeless on the street? We tend to look at things in extremes.
If you choose a place that fits your personality and you find people at that college that you get along with and that understand you, and it's a place for you to grow academically, of course it's going to impact your life. You're going to be an amazing new person. You don't necessarily need to find that at Harvard.
Students, ask yourself this question. If you had better grades in school right now, do you think you would be happier?
Not necessarily.
No, because I got into the college that I wanted to.
Yes, but it wouldn't be that much. I think I'm pretty happy right now.
I think I'd feel more at ease, like when my grades are good, I definitely feel like my life is more together.
Now think about this. If you were happier, do you think you would have better grades in school?
Ooh. Yeah, I guess so, maybe. I don't know. That's a tough question. Sorry.
If I'm happier, maybe that means that that's a tough one, I think.
Not really. I mean, depending on whether or not, it doesn't matter whether or not I'm happy. I still would probably just work as hard.
I don't really think so. I don't think my happiness has affected my grades at all. Rather, my grades affect my happiness.
It turns out the formula doesn't actually work this way, according to new research by Sean Aker.
We need to reverse the formula for happiness and success. In the past 3 years, I've traveled to 45 different countries, working with schools and companies in the midst of an economic downturn. And what I found is that most companies and schools follow a formula for success, which is this: if I work harder, I'll be more successful. And if I'm more successful, then I'll be happier. That undergirds most of our parenting styles, our managing styles, the way that we motivate our behavior. And the problem is, it's scientifically broken and backwards for 2 reasons. First, every time your brain has a success, you just change the goalpost of what success looked like. You got good grades, now you have to get better grades. You got into a good school, now you have to get a better school. You got a good job, now you have to get a better job. You hit your sales target, we're going to change your sales target. And if happiness is on the opposite side of success, your brain never gets there. What we've done is we've pushed happiness over the cognitive horizon as a society. And that's because we think we have to be successful, then we'll be happier. But the real problem is our brains work in the opposite order. If you can raise somebody's level of positivity in the present, then their brain experiences what we now call a happiness advantage, which is your brain at positive performs significantly better than it does at negative, neutral, or stressed. Your intelligence rises, your creativity rises, your energy levels rise. In fact, what we found is that every single business outcome improves.
So how can students be happy now instead of waiting until college? Well, understanding the happiness advantage is not enough. We need to create a happy lifestyle. Just like we practice exercising for our physical health, we need to practice being happy for our mental health until it becomes a habit.
We found that there are ways that you can train your brain to be able to become more positive. In just a 2-minute span of time, done for 21 days in a row, we can actually rewire your brain, allowing your brain to actually work more optimistically and more successfully.
There are activities students can do every day to become more positive so they can deal with stressful times.
We've done these things in research now in every single company that I've worked with, getting them to write down 3 new things that they're grateful for 21 days in a row, 3 new things each day. And at the end of that, their brain starts to retain a pattern of scanning the world not for the negative, but for the positive first. Journaling about one positive experience you've had over the past 24 hours allows your brain to relive it. Exercise teaches your brain that your behavior matters. We find that meditation allows your brain to get over the cultural ADHD that we've been creating by trying to do multiple tasks at once, and allows our brains to focus on the task at hand. And finally, random acts of kindness or conscious acts of kindness. We get people, when they open up their inbox, to write one positive email praising or thanking somebody in their social support network.
Well, does it work? To test Sean's theory, we asked 5 Highland students, including 2 Chill Club members, to participate in a 21-day happiness challenge. If there's an overall increase in happiness, then we'll be able to show all students that they can deal with stress and cultivate happiness in their lives by simply changing their habits. First, we handed out 2 questionnaires that would help us determine each student's current happiness level. The first questionnaire was a satisfaction with life scale, which was 5 questions, and the second was the Oxford Happiness Questionnaire, which was 29 questions. Then, we told our participants about the challenge.
I don't think that necessarily the idea behind this is to do these 5 things. I think the idea behind this is to make you realize that you should always give yourself time every day.
I'm really intrigued to see how this is going to play out, because I think this is a great thing to do. These are activities I usually don't tend to do.
It makes you really think of what you have already that you really like. Because if you focus so much on like,
what
I really want this, I really want this, you don't focus on what you have.
We told the students to pick 1 or 2 habits and stick with them for 3 weeks straight. After those 3 weeks, we met again and handed out the 2 questionnaires a second time to see if there was any change in their happiness level. Here's what we found. All participants except 1 had a higher satisfaction with life score after the 21-day challenge. The student scores increased by an average of 15%, and all 5 students had a higher Oxford happiness score the second time around, with an average increase in happiness of 16%. In just a short amount of time, our student participants saw significant improvements in their mental wellness just by making small changes to their daily routine.
The meditation, it was a bit hard at first, like considering you have like all these different things you're thinking of, but the headspace thing was really, really good. Like it helped me a lot on like
I
understanding
Headspace. Like
understanding how to meditate and how to do it and like stay focused. Like I really tried to just focus on his voice.
The meditation really, I think, had the best effect on me because it led me to like a spot of peace and quiet, which is something I don't have a lot.
It allowed me to really think about like how much I actually have to live for.
I do my homework a lot better because I'm never getting distracted as much.
Before like the math tests and things like that, I would get super nervous like on the tests and I would like rush and everything. But then after the meditation, I've been able to concentrate more on what I'm doing. Like Diane has said, like on my homework. When I'm taking like a math test, now instead of freaking out, I'm like, okay, calm down. And then I would, read every question, and now I'm like more calm and I see myself actually doing better.
Now you may understand that habits can change our lives, but is that enough for people to take action?
You can create a mindset shift, but it won't stick unless there's a behavioral change as well.
Some students may choose to do these habits at home, but in order to see a shift in culture where everybody is focused on making mental wellness a priority, we need to allow students to do positive habits in school as well.
So what I would love to see is that if we got the teachers, the educators, and the students all doing the same positive habits and believing that positivity is important in the present, what we'd see is a very different future, I believe.
Everyone is causing stress on students, whether it's student self-perception or parents creating some of that or teachers creating some of that. Everybody's got a stake in this whole thing, and we can all do something to improve it.
Mr. Rayside says that students need to have a bigger role in the wellness movement.
One of the concerns was, well, the students aren't interested enough in this. We don't hear enough from the students about this, and your voice on things like this is really, really powerful. So if these are the kinds of things that you want to see happen, then you have to start speaking up.
The parents of the Highlands community have a big role in this movement as well.
I'm trying to tell my kids that they're going to do fine in life and that they should just get as broad an education as they can, take the classes that interest them, that they want to take, do as well as they can, but I don't care if they get A's, I don't care if they take APs, I just want them to be happy.
But there are some parents that, that are checking Genesis for their kids. They check for homework, right? To make sure that their kids are doing what they need to do.
I'd rather see parents almost take a step back and let their sons or daughters kind of decide what's best for them without undue interference. I mean, it's one thing to guide, but there's another thing to interfere and understand that not everybody's motivated by the same thing.
I think the role of a parent in their child's education is to be asking kids questions about what they're learning in school.
Constantly open up the conversation, ask them what they're enjoying, what was the best part of their day, what was the worst part of their day, and use that to help guide them in the right path. Being a part of the Wellness PLC for the past 2 years, I feel like we have made some really significant, maybe not tangible, but really impactful changes. It's made conversations happen that otherwise would never have happened.
I think that if students are feeling better about themselves, if students are feeling, healthier, feeling stress in a healthy way, that they would be more productive in school. They would learn more. They would achieve more by doing, by feeling better.
We've said before we started this that the hardest thing to change is culture. And we are moving toward a culture change in this building. But to change culture is ongoing. It can never stop. The conversation has to be constant.
I think we really just have to keep the lines of communication open to really understand what students are feeling. And the only way we do that is to keep talking, to keep hosting programs and have a real good understanding of what is going on in the lives of students.
Those open lines of communication are going to help us move mountains when it comes to student wellness here at Northern Highlands.
Let's broaden what it means to be a high school. Competition and academics are just one part of the equation. Wellness is the other part. If one of them is missing, then a student is incomplete. But if we have both successes and wellness in Highlands, then our students will be happier and more motivated for their time during school and in their amazing lives in the real world.
We need to be able to convince people that we have to restore some balance in our school. That's the most important thing.